Hello, Calaveras County, and welcome to another edition of Mondo Calaveras. I'm your host, Mike Taylor. You know when you hear about those people that are just so talented that you're surprised at how one person can possibly be so good at so many things. On an edition of Mondo Calaveras that you'll see very soon, today's guest is also on that show because he's a founding member of the Black Irish Band. But really, in my mind, this guy's big claim to fame in Calaveras and Tuolumne counties is the Sonora Celtic Fair, which for a short time was the Calaveras Celtic Fair. But the Sonora Celtic Fair is one of the most fun events you can possibly get to in the Mother Lode, and it's in March this year, as usual. But gotta welcome you again, Patrick Karnahan. It is so nice to have you.
It's good to be here, Michael.
You bet,
It's always a
Patrick.
pleasure,
Now,
yeah.
you and I stumbled there, Patrick Michael Karnahan, because you're also an artist, and you are one heck of a painter.
Well, thank you.
It is something, and you've painted in Ireland, you painted railroads, all that
Yeah.
stuff you're fond of. But really, what we're talking about this time is the Celtic Fair,
Yep.
which 33 years this year.
33 years, hard to believe. Yeah.
My gosh!
Wow.
Now, how did something that has grown to be, I'm going to say it, maybe this doesn't air in Tuolumne County, but it's bigger than the Tuolumne County Fair. It's bigger than the Mother Lode
It
Fair.
is, yeah. It's very large.
How did this start?
It started really small. I back in my 20s, I'd been living in Ireland, and I got a job making a stipend of money teaching landscape art over County Mayo, which is on the west coast of Ireland, in a little town called Westport. And I got involved with an American sculptor who was married to a local Irish girl, and he said that I have a school here that we're trying to teach senior citizens sculpting, and I need somebody to teach oil painting, landscape painting.
Oh.
I said, well, I would love to do it. So I came back the next year, and I was out with a group of about a dozen or so senior citizens, and we'd go out through Ireland near Kilpatrick, Connemara to the south, and Galway, and we'd just go out and paint on the coast, and I'd teach them basic techniques, and I got totally involved with the culture and enjoyed it. And then as it ended up, some of the paintings I brought back, some of the work I did there, besides teaching, I would sell. That's how I made extra money to pay for my Guinness habit, you know?
There you go.
So anyways, I had some paintings left over, and it was getting around St. Patrick's Day. I think it was after the first of the year. This is going back 33 years. Mm-hmm. And I said, it'd be nice to maybe have an art show around St. Patrick's Day. And there was nothing going on in the Mother Lode, so I said, well, sure, but maybe I need to have a reception and get some music. And if we're going to have a reception, got to have food and Guinness.
Sure,
And
yeah.
So one thing led to another. The first year it was called a Celtic celebration on St. Patrick's Day. Oh. And it was myself, and I invited a couple other realist painters, some watercolorists. And Golden Bough was actually one of the first bands ever performed.
Golden Bough, which still performs at the
today.
Celtic
They
Fair.
look
That's
really
so
good.
cool.
It's amazing what you can do with formaldehyde. Jeez, Paul's looking really good. No, just kidding. Me and Paul are good friends. I better be nice to him because he's doing our sound for us at the Celtic Fair.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
But those guys, man, the longevity is incredible. But they were around back in the day, and there weren't a lot of Celtic bands to choose from. Mm-hmm. This was long before the Black Irish Band. And so I picked them up, a couple other performers, a bagpiper. And long story short, Saturday it rained cats and dogs. It rained hard.
Welcome to Ireland.
Yeah, and it was right. It was in the littlest building at the fairgrounds, the Creekside. And then I remember we had about 260 people. And then on Sunday, I think we had a total of 8 people showed up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, in comparison.
Yeah.
Now, we have 12, 14,000 people, and depending on the weather, of course. But we have a large group of folks come out, and then we have the entire fairgrounds we use. So it's quite a big event.
Yeah. And for folks who've never been there, I'll let you tell them a little bit about it. And if you forget anything that jumps at me, I'll give them a holler. But now, what is the event like today?
Well, first of all, what is Celtic? A lot of people don't know what Celtic means.
That's a good point.
In the early days, they thought we were celebrating the Boston basketball team, the Celtics.
the
Celtics, with the leprechaun and all that. So, but really, the Celtic people were pretty much a Western race of people in history, and they occupied a good part of the western chunk of the continent of Europe, all the way to the Ukraine, parts of Spain, Galicia, Brittany, and France. Of course, the common countries today, we assimilate the Irish, the Scottish, Cornish, and Welsh, which is the dominant Celtic culture.
Yeah.
And my idea was to have a festival that would not only celebrate that of Ireland and St. Patrick and all that, but try to bring in the whole Celtic culture together, not just Ireland, but all the groups. So we try to represent the whole spectrum of Celtic culture. How do we do it? We do it through music, of course. You know, we have 12 bands there, traditional performing bands, more like Celtic punk rock bands. This year we have the Real McKenzies,
Yeah.
first time ever, and they're like one of the forerunners of that style of music that Flogging Molly and Dropkick Murphys are famous for.
You bet.
But then we have traditional groups like Golden Bough, a more tribal beat like Wicked Tinkers, which you're familiar with.
The Wicked
Yeah,
Tinkers. I'll interrupt you there.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing when the Tinkers are playing, because guys in the audience will wonder why the women have gotten so excited that the Tinkers are playing.
Right, yeah.
The Tinkers wear the kilts that you wear when you're playing the music, and well,
Right,
let's
yeah.
just say that when music happens, some things can happen, and it can be a really entertaining show.
They do swirl those kilts around quite a bit.
When
and,
they tear into those jigs and reels.
And unfortunately, it's all regiment. What do they call it? A regimental.
Regimental.
Regimental. That's me knowing it. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But we have them. They're great. We have Cullen's Hounds. A new group called Mashed and Mince. It might be Mince and Mash, but they're kind of a bagpipe tribal group like Wicked Tinkers, but mostly all women. That's something new.
Oh, nice.
And then we have harpists, bagpipe bands. It should be a lot of fun. Then, of course, there's the activities, the sports. Jousting has become very popular. We introduced that back at the 12th Celtic Fair, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was huge because it's all competition. We have riders from all around the world. And it's the real deal. If you were there last year on Friday, you know it was real. We had a pretty significant injury. This is not for the squeamish at heart, but it's a real thing. You see knights, they're wearing, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of armor. The horses are armored up, and they go out and there's a point system.
Yeah.
And then this year we're really into what we call night fights, which is the foot combat, which is very popular on the History Channel right now. And we have some of those competitors, and I believe there's well over 50 or 60 of them,
My
men and
gosh,
women.
wow.
There's dual matches, there's group matches, there's actually full-on wars. They wear authentic armor that represents probably 200 to 300 years of Celtic history, Scottish, and mostly English history, where they clash together quite a bit.
Yeah.
But then we have Mary Queen of Scots. Her entourage comes to represent the Scottish history.
Yeah.
We have the
She
ancient,
holds court a couple, 3 times a day.
3 times
each
a day.
of the fair.
yeah, and then we have the ancient Picts, the Gauls, all different types of history. We tried to basically put out about 3,000 years of history there. So you'll walk through a village of all different time periods, and people will take the time out to talk about, like last year we had Legio X, which is a Roman group from the time of the Roman and Celtic wars that took place up by Hadrian's Wall, and they talk about how the Scots, like the Picts, Seal people would get ready to go into combat, and how then the Romans would set up their defensive lines. So they actually talk about battles. We have Scottish knights that will talk about, like the Battle of Ballincockburn, which Robert the Bruce won for the crown of Scotland. So there's a lot of history there, all the way up to the more popular time period of Bonnie Prince Charlie and like the Outlander series. So there's a lot of history there, a lot of color. We're talking at least 300 to 400 people in costume.
It's
lots of stuff.
I would say it's at least that.
It's crazy, yeah.
The thing that Patrick is kind of underplaying is there is a Celtic marketplace, and yes,
there
there's
is.
a lot of Celtic stuff that
Yeah.
you can buy, and those folks that sell the kilts and all the regalia
Right.
are there. But it's the reenactment groups where you get what Patrick is talking about, which is you walk by and it looks like the lady is preparing lunch, and you start to talk with her, and she will completely share with you
Right.
how lunch was prepared in those days,
Exactly.
and how the fire was used, and whether or not they even bothered to use fire. It's
Exactly.
just fascinating.
And we also bring a lot of livestock too. We've had Scottish
yeah.
longhorn cattle, we've had sheep, we've had sheepdog trials. And besides that, we also have dancers. We do feature Irish step dancing as well as Highland dance, which is completely different. We have full-on bagpipe bands that march around the field.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the Celtic Marketplace, we have well over 100 vendors.
Yeah.
Plus, this year, we've been going on a decade, our whiskey tasting building. And
Oh, yeah.
the idea being, you've been there before, I'm sure. Yeah,
I
you
did
have.
not sleep there.
Yeah, right.
I was close when it was in
Yeah.
Calaveras County. The very
Right.
first time you did the whiskey tasting,
Yes, that's
I
right. It
almost
started
had
in
to
Calaveras.
sleep at
Yeah.
Frogtown. But
I think I did, absolutely, yeah. But that's good because we try to educate people about the different types of whiskeys, where they come from in Scotland. Also, the difference between like a single malt, a blended, or an Irish whiskey. Or this year we're actually carrying a Welsh whiskey.
Oh,
so
wow.
we talk about how they maturate the whiskey, and the difference between the smoky versus the peaty flavor, the single malt, what aging does to Scotch.
Yeah.
We will be offering seminars both Saturday and Sunday in the whiskey building where you'll sit down at a table with a professional taster and explain the process.
oh, nice.
Yeah. Now, for you that like your beers, we got the Guinness, the Harp, the stouts. Also, we have a Celtic caterer this year who's going to do a cooking show,
Wow.
a live cooking show, and there's going to be a room for about 100 people there. And then he'll talk about how to prepare Celtic traditional dishes.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's something new.
So it's
Yeah.
not just a corned beef and cabbage kind of
No,
thing. And that's
no.
it too, and that's very
Yeah, we
much
have
worth
that.
mentioning,
And
is the
haggis.
food vendors
Exactly, yeah.
are incredible. And my advice to anyone who goes to the Sonora Celtic Fair is, when you get hungry, go get in line. Because
Well,
it can get crowded, and you know which vendors are
Yeah.
turning out the good stuff
Well,
because
we-
the line is a long
We
line.
work on, after doing it for 33 years, I try to mitigate lines. I don't like
Yeah.
lines. I don't like
Yeah.
going to events where you have to stand in a long line to get a drink or food. So we try to minimize that. We have enough vendors to cover the masses.
Yeah.
And for people that don't want the traditional, like the haggis or a Scottish meat pie, we have regular, like a taqueria there.
Oh, sure.
So there's something for every
Yeah.
every nationality.
The problem
every
is that
folk.
so many people want to walk around like the king
With
with,
the
the
turkey
turkey
legs,
leg in their
right,
hand.
Oh,
so-
right, yeah. Yeah, we have a lot. We have a children's area too. It's all geared toward children. And then I should mention our stage act. We have the most wonderful magicians, fire eaters, jugglers,
Oh, you-
and they perform on their own stages.
Yeah.
They're their own acts, and
Yeah.
they seem to really get the whole breadth of demographic in. I mean, young, the old. I mean,
They
I don't
do.
care where
They-
you're from. You're
yeah.
going to enjoy the stage acts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they are. They're something.
They're great, yeah.
I've seen fire eaters, jugglers of all kinds, juggling everything except the chainsaws. None of that
Chainsaws, right,
nonsense.
yeah.
But they're. I've even seen one guy who used to ask people in the crowd for stuff,
Oh,
and
right,
he would
yeah.
just add that to his routine.
And that's all part of it. I mean, we try to make it just a multi-learning level adventure. Really, that's why we do it 3 days now. Friday, it starts on March 8th, and Friday's still geared around schools programs or small what they call homeschoolers or people that would like to come to the fair but not necessarily interested in any of the alcohol or the whiskey. So we do a special where we open it up to school and family groups up to about 3 o'clock on Friday. And then Friday, then we convert, and then we have the whiskey and the Guinness, and then it gets a little more rambunctious, a little fun. But
Is there kind of the opening party on Friday night again this year?
well, what we're doing is we're going to leave the whiskey building open for people
okay.
to go in there. We're going to start the whiskey seminars then. And then, of course, Saturdays, we begin at 10 o'clock in the morning, I should say, and then the general festival's over at 7. And then at 7:30, we have a special ticket. It's called the Kaylee. This is the big
That's
party. This is where we're going to feature the real Mackenzies, and they are dynamite. There's like 7 of them in the band. First time they've ever been in our area.
Wow.
We're hoping there won't be a mosh pit, but it's going to be fun. It's really going to get you moving. And if you're not into that, we're going to keep the whiskey building open, and we're going to have what they call a traditional Irish session. So there could be 20 musicians in there. There will be whiskey. People can hang out and listen to some more of the traditional without amplification. So we have 2 things going on Saturday night. Sunday we begin at 10 o'clock, and we're done at 6 o'clock. there's always a time change on that weekend, so we keep it open till 6 o'clock.
Okay.
But as far as the jousting, people do ask about the joust. We do a demonstration joust Friday day around noon, and then later in the day we do the first competition joust Friday
Okay.
afternoon. We do 2 on Saturday, and then the finals will be Sunday, I believe, at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So if you want to come there, everything's done on points. Also, we have a new jouster this year who comes from Mexico City.
Oh, wow.
So we're excited to have
Cool.
a Spaniard going to be jousting
Truly an
in there.
international competition.
Truly is. A lot of competitors come from Canada.
Yeah, they do.
And East Coast. And so we're excited. Charlie Andrews, the reigning world champ of heavy armor jousting, will be there jousting this year. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be great.
It's something to see those guys get on their trusty steeds.
Oh, yeah.
They are not small horses because they're carrying hundreds and hundreds
Hundreds
of
of
pounds.
pounds, right, yeah.
And I remember this was several years ago, but there was a young guy from Reno who was there, and
Right.
I swear that once he put on his armor, I wasn't sure he was going to be able to walk.
Well,
It's
it does
really
wear,
something.
it does, it weighs several hundred pounds,
It
but,
does.
but the knights of the time period, now, the fully armored knight was popular in the battlefield probably about late 1000 to maybe up to about 1500. Of
Okay.
course, with the invention of gunpowder and better armament,
Yeah.
the armor became so heavy they had to discard it. But the part of jousting, which was a sport, was used in combat, but it became such a sport that they continued jousting all the way up in the 1600s.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, in
So
fact,
it
Henry
was-
VIII was a very good jouster and had many suits of armor made for him. He would host large tournaments. People would come from all over. In Scotland and especially in Wales, there were a lot of highly skilled men-at-arms and knights. And that was quite the thing. Not only were they trained for battle, but then they also did it as a sport. And the idea of the foot combat as well as a joust, it was an idea to keep these warriors in shape when they weren't in battle time.
Actually battling.
Yeah. But this sport of jousting existed for about 400 years, and it's gotten very popular since the National Geographic program, Knights of Mayhem, which is Charlie Andrews groups, as well as Shane Adams' heavy metal jousting, which aired a few years ago. So it's very popular. It's in the news all the time. There's been a lot of movies about it. And so we're excited because we're kind of the only West Coast full contact international championship.
That does that. That's something
It's going to be fun, yeah.
Now, that's something that I've told me in the past, you take some pride in. The Sonora Celtic Fair is a big deal in the Celtic circuit, or in that universe, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We're the very first modern-day Celtic fair. There have been Scottish events, and there's been Irish St. Patrick's Day fair, but the first event in modern times to be called a Celtic fair, to unite all the Celtic nations together. It's become so popular since the Sonora Celtic Fair, Calaveras Celtic Fair, that other events that are pure Scottish or pure Irish now are calling themselves the Scottish Fair and Celtic Games. So everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon because they realize there's strength in number, and there's a lot of people that can claim Celtic heritage as well as yourself.
You bet.
Taylor,
You
very
bet.
very Irish.
Yep,
name.
there's some of it back there, you bet.
I'm Scotch Irish, so and we try to represent the full breadth of the Celtic nations. It's not just Ireland, Scotland, Cornwall. We have features of Brittany. We have groups that talk about like history of the Isle of Man, as well as Galicia, which is part of Spain near the Pyrenees, and so we talk about that. And we have clans too. That's another thing. We have Scottish clans that talk about their history, as well as Celtic information societies. And they're more than happy to help you if you have a question about your family heritage. Do you have a tartan? Am I actually Scottish, or is that an Irish name? Or can you help me here? And I'm not exactly sure because there's a lot of people out there sporting Irish names that probably don't even know they're really Irish.
Yeah, that's
or
it.
Scottish. Yeah.
Now, as you've taken over the whole Motherlode Fairgrounds, is it going to outgrow that and you'll have to come back to Calaveras sometime?
Well, the main reason why we went back to Sonora was the tournament, the arena. We needed,
Yeah, the
since
arena
we
really
are
does.
in March.
Yeah.
And we remember the snow fair at Calaveras,
Yeah, the snow
2006.
fair, yep.
We had over a half foot of snow on the grounds, and it was really hard. And that's difficult. We need an arena that's
true
covered.
arena,
And
yeah.
in Sonora, we have about a 60% coverage. So if
Yeah.
it rains, hails, or snows, we can still put on the show. And
Get the
that's
audience
really
there.
critical because
Yeah.
the jousting is what a lot of people come for now, because
Yeah.
it is a big deal.
It is.
And they come from all over the country to see it. So that's the main reason why we're at Sonora. Even though parking is challenging, we do have it worked out with Tuolumne County Transit. They provide buses. Black Oak Casino, one of our big sponsors, they provide shuttle buses for us too.
Yeah.
And we do list on our website the different locations for pickup. So we have mitigated the problem with parking there.
Yeah.
And rain or shine or snow, we will be going on that weekend. Nothing
bet.
stops the fair.
No.
No.
And I'll be honest with folks, it's a lot of fun in the weather.
It is fun.
That snow fair that everybody
Yeah,
jokes about,
yeah.
it's really interesting because you can tell at the Sonora Celtic Fair who I guess I'll call them old timers are in the Celtic Fair, because they remember the snow fair, and that's all they'll say is the snow fair.
The snow fair.
And yeah, it's a crack up, especially if you happen to have been there. And I love it, of course, because I'm here in Calaveras.
Well, you know,
County.
when the snow fair hit, it was here at Angels Camp, and it
Yeah.
was beautiful for pictures.
It was great.
It snowed heavily duty on
Yeah.
Friday, and that morning we woke up, a lot of the tents had collapsed because of the way the
Yeah,
snow.
yeah.
But I'll tell you, when they did the first joust around noon, it was beautiful to see those war horses in the armor with snow on the ground.
Yeah.
You know, so we like snow, but we prefer not to have it this year, hopefully.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we're
That's
March
right.
8th, 9th, and 10th.
9th and 10th,
And
you
our
bet.
website's easy, just SonoraCelticFair.com.
Yep.
Fair is always spelled Faire, like
Yep.
the old traditional spelling. Yeah.
And I will give you big props on that website because it's got a really good schedule, and it lets
good.
you know when everything's going on.
Thank you.
Gives you biographies on all the bands, so if you're not too familiar with somebody, they'll let you know who's coming and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my manager, Gary Britt, did a wonderful job on it. He's my manager at the fair. And he did a wonderful job on the flyers, the posters, but his website's his baby, and he's done a really good job. It's very informative. I'll
Yeah,
let him
it's
know.
nice now. And that helps me flip to the other side of the Sonora Celtic Fair, which is you need an army to put this thing on.
I do.
How many people do you, well, actually, I guess there's kind of two questions. Maybe it's how many people do you employ and how many people kind of volunteer to help out just because it's such a fun weekend?
Most people are volunteers,
Are they?
or they're contracted.
Okay.
Like I have a few what we call staff coordinators. I have a great two managers, and then I have staff, like a volunteer staff coordinator, a security staff, and somebody who's in charge, like the whiskey building. A lot of old friends asking on favors. But as far as the volunteer force, most of them, the core, come from Calaveras and Tuolumne County.
Okay.
And it takes roughly about 100 people over the weekend to put the event on. It's a big
Wow.
event. I mean,
Yeah.
requires a lot. You have your box office folks, you have your green room people working sound systems, people that are helping the nights. And just set up and tear down. Of course, that's a huge thing.
That's
You're creating
huge.
a whole world.
How long does that take?
We get the fair guns usually on Wednesday. We have a really good manager over there. We get on Wednesday, so we start trucking things in and we start decorating. And by Friday morning, we're ready to roll.
Yeah.
And then Sunday, believe it or not, our crew is so good that we're usually done, the bulk of it, Sunday at midnight. That's how
Really?
good we are now. Yeah.
It's broken down that quick.
Yeah, well, we have down to a science. You know,
Yeah.
after 33 years, we
You
finally
think you
got
would, right?
some things right. They are great. Our workers are awesome. We do annual events with them, campouts, and we try to treat them well. They get fed. Also, we're looking for volunteers. It's a 4-hour shift. You get free admission. We feed you too. You get food.
Wow.
And you get to hang around at the fair and have a good time.
Yeah.
You know? So it's not a bad thing, you know.
That's not a bad thing at
That's
all.
fun. That's a lot of fun.
Where does the bulk of your audience, the folks who come to the show, come from?
Well, you know,
are they from the valley, or is it a
Trending
lot of
right
other
now,
road?
it's interesting you ask. I mean, we're always looking at demographics. Where
Yeah.
do people come from, you know? It looks like the bigger hits we get are from the Sacramento area.
Oh, okay.
A lot of East Bay folks.
Interesting.
You get a lot of Pleasanton folks, San Jose people, Dublin area, Tracy, Manteca, and then of course the Motherlode folks. I mean, we get a lot of folks from Sonora, Amador, and Calaveras too.
Yeah.
You know, some from Mariposa. It's funny, we don't pull too many south of Merced, like the Fresno
Oh,
audience.
okay.
Even though it's the same drive from Fresno to Sonora as it is from Sacramento,
Yeah.
we don't seem to pull a lot of Fresno people.
I'll be darned.
But yeah, we actually had a lot of hits from people from Chicago, Los Angeles, Reno,
Wow.
Nevada. You know, and you'll see a lot of folks there from all over. You know, and a lot of people kind of plan their vacation around the Celtic Fair. They're here, and then the following week they go to wonderful Murphy's Irish Days too.
Murphy's
So
Irish
there's
Days,
a lot of
yeah.
neat things going on in the Mudload.
Yeah, it's March. It's amazing for being a month that can have sometimes sketchy weather.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those busy months where something is always going on.
You know, that's the thing about the fair. I think it's popular too. Is that we didn't originally have to compete with a lot of other events because of the weather. A lot of people are afraid to try anything in March.
Yep.
But you know, we've always stuck on that weekend. Usually, it's always the weekend before St. Patrick's Day, and we always try to be the weekend opposite of Murphy's Irish Days because we like to have big events, different weekends, so everybody can benefit. It seems to work out good. But the weather has always been an issue, but we're ready for it. I mean, we've had rain, snow, flooding, sunny weather. We have to wear sunscreen, you know.
Yeah.
But we're ready, no matter what. You know, and most of the attractions are inside. All the music stages are indoors.
Yeah.
Even the jousting, 60% of the arena, as I mentioned before, is covered.
Yeah.
So we have buildings. You know, if it should get some weather, you just tuck into a building.
You bet.
know, and there's vendors there. There's music
Yeah.
going on, dancers. We even have a tribe of Native American dancers who are going to perform with the bagpipers again this year.
Oh, cool.
That's good. Yeah, we have a whole group
Interesting.
coming up in the valley.
Something different.
Yeah, it should be
bet.
fun. A local Amador person, Val Shadowhawk, I don't know if you ever met him. He's going to do some chanting and drumming with the group.
Okay.
Went over
Nice.
really good last year.
Sweet.
We had, 30 bagpipers and a whole troop of mixed Native American dancers that would dance to the bagpipes, and the tribe
Wow.
would be really neat.
I'll be darned.
Really neat. Cross culture. Yeah.
My naivete, is that something that, happened as soon as American Indians heard the bagpipes? They were entranced by it?
From what I
or-
understand, I've done a little research. I guess on the eastern part of Canada, up near New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, there was some Native American tribes and Scots settlers that intermarried, and they started
Wow.
exchanging a lot of traditions, as well as they would share each other's language and instrumentation. So
Wow.
it wasn't uncommon for some Native Americans to get into the Scotch music, the Scots type music of the time, and the
darn.
different beats, and vice versa. So there
Yeah.
was some of that taking place back. We're talking, the 1700s. There
Yeah.
was that all going, and it's amazing. Yeah. And I try to focus on that too, because we have so much support from Black Oak and Chicken Ranch, and we like to honor their culture too, because it's
bet.
all part of it.
Well, and that's it. It's not just going to a fair. It's you're going to learn something, and the kids aren't going to realize they're learning anything. That's what gets me, because I've watched kids watch some of the reenactors in their
Yeah,
camps,
right, yeah.
or even some of the clans in their huts.
Yeah.
They're just mesmerized.
That's right.
And we didn't mention it, but the kids beating each other up with rubber swords is awful cool too.
Well, we try to offer people an experience, and this goes way back. I believe a lot of these folks may never get there. They may never, take that flight to Scotland or Ireland, Cornwall, Wales.
Yep.
So my idea on that second week of March is we bring it to them. We
Bury
bring
them
the
in
cultures, the
it. You
sights, the
bet.
sound, the food. You want to be able to close your eyes for a minute and think that maybe you just traveled there or back in time.
And you have, because we already went through a half hour. Patrick, Michael Karnahan.
right.
We
Thanks.
can't wait for March 8th through 10th.
Yep.
Go to the Sonora Celtic Fair. I tell you, it is a very good time. Until next time here, I'm Mike Taylor. Enjoy.